PNR with Adam R. This episode of 3 PNR is featured on the UnX Network. Welcome to 3 PNR. I'm your host, Adam R., and with me on this episode is Steve Mera Paranormal Specialist. Steven, how you doing, sir?
I'm good, Adam. Thanks for having me on the show.
Glad to have you back. Since we've spoken, I have learned a lot, I'll say. A lot of perspectives. One thing in particular, you and I discussed this about, ufology and the paranormal investigators not having these barriers and cross communicating. And it's in full agreement with all of them across the board.
It is. Well, do you know what? That's impressive, because if we tried to have done this 20 years ago, it would have been a bit of a difficulty. Not everybody saw all the connections, but it says to me that we're moving in the right direction. That's what's really important.
I agree. Douglas Wilson, he's the head investigator for the United States, MUFON. And he's got a fantastic approach to investigating anything paranormal. I'm going to start saying parallel to the normal, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, because at the end of the day, it's what it means. It's just something, it's abnormal to us. So it's just parallel to what we consider normal. And when investigating, you should approach it with a really professional approach. And he's
absolutely, yeah. I mean, we've been stuck in terminologies for a long, long time, and that's also problematic. Just the word paranormal, because this is so many different things, and it's so vague, that name as well. So
yeah,
just say it as it is without those barriers and just document it as we go.
So people understand even culture is parallel to the normal. If it's a different culture than yours, it's abnormal to you. So
absolutely. Yeah, it is.
So on that subject, and I'm glad, because when you said it to me some time ago, I kept bringing it up to every ufologist and paranormal guy I'd spoken to, even the afterlife people. And I said to them, I feel like there'd be a lot more answers today had we not had these barriers.
Exactly. Yeah. They did limit us. They suppressed the research considerably. Though that we wanted to get into this 10, 15 years ago, we were feeling resistance from people that just so fixed in the subject that they didn't want to venture forth into other areas. It was just hard enough to manage what they were dealing with. And I can get that, because, these subjects are vast. But I think when we start getting to a point where we can't add any new information, we've got to start looking outside the area. And this is when we start getting into these other fringe subjects. And then when we start to identify what those consist of, we start to see similarities within the whole genre themselves.
Agreed. One of the things that are big, I'd spoken to a lot of these investigators, and some of them had started, as skeptics, and then something happened to them along the way, which completely changed them, right? Because now you spend years searching, you're a skeptic, and then you see something, you can't explain it. It's a parallel to the normal, and now your whole perspective has changed, your whole frame of thought.
It does. I mean, I don't mind skeptics at all. I mean, I was a skeptic myself. And I managed to, believe it or not, to stay in the subject for 13 years until I had an experience that completely changed my mind. And, well, of course, I was lucky. Get through 13 years. But it was that mindset of, the academia type mindset that you have that wants to find rational explanations when you're desperately trying to retrieve them and find some explanation for it. But at some point, something significant happens where you absolutely cannot rule out the paranormal. And of course, once that actually happens, then it's the only feasible approach, isn't it?
Yeah. If you approached me 10 years ago and said UFOs are real, I would be on the fence. But then the U.S. military released their videos, and what do you say to that?
Well, true. Yeah. That's one good thing that's come over the last few years, is the fact that, when we talk about UFOs, we're not the big elephant in the room anymore. It's not such a laughing matter now. because, you know, you can always quote, you know, there are serious people out there in the government which are quite happy to say, yes, UFOs exist. Now we have to move to stage 2 and kind of work out what they consist of, which is going to be the real big struggle here, is trying to work out exactly what they consist of, what technologies that we have against what they have, because we've now reached the time. If we could have done all this 30, 40 years ago, we might have been able to say for an absolute certain that some of these objects are absolutely not ours. You know, but now we've come to the year 2021, and we've got some wonderful toys out there that I'm sure we're not aware of, and it gets very, very difficult to say, well, it's ours or theirs. We are in a situation now where we have a problem, and it's the same for anything that's provided to us in research now. A photograph is a photograph. You know, it's fantastic to get photographs. Unfortunately, it's just another stone to the mountain we've already got. It doesn't give us any answers. And it's the same for videos. And of course, you know, I've come across some young kids at school which are using software which could, you know, really fool some of these guys which are analysing these stuff. And we have a technological battle going on as well. So we have to say, okay, what is real good evidence now? Because years ago, we could rely on photos and videos as being quite good evidence. And for me now, it's about, you know, it's the physical attributes, you know, and the multiple witnesses. And I think things like that, especially when we get confirmations on radar and things like that, that really seals it for me, that something was really there, and somebody did actually see what went on. But we're still left with that kind of pre-conclusion at the end, trying to work out exactly what is it, whose is it, and where are they coming from? Is a big question, I suppose.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I'm 100% sure it's not Chinese or Russian. They're not exactly subtle people. They would rub that in our face, because what would we be able to do about it? And, you know,
well, I do know that there has been drone wars that have been going on over the last, you know, maybe 15, 10 years. You know, each country has got drone technology, and some of them are really, you know, quite amazing. But when we're starting to look into what this phenomenon really consists of, we have to start looking at technologies and start questioning, you know, at what point do we limit ourselves? What point do we say, okay, we can't go across this barrier now because we surely haven't got this technology? You know, that's difficult, and we're always learning new things as time goes on. You know, in a year's time and in 2 years' time, other things will come to light, which might make us question even further about how advanced we are in regarding technologies, because, you know, it's always surprising. A typical scenario was back in the day of, say, around about 1973, 1974, there were pilots of starfighter jets, and those were the in thing then. They were fast. And it was one of America's leading military aircraft. They were competed against sometimes with things they could not identify. Pilots reported an unknown craft, black, stealthy looking. And, you know, most researchers will realize very quickly that they were being pitted against the F-114 Nighthawk flyer. Which
the F-117 Nighthawk.
That's right, yeah. F-117. Of course, it was white back then. It wasn't black. But nevertheless, though, they were put up against these things sometimes, and they didn't know what they were seeing. They were outmaneuvered, outflown. And they were thinking, well, you know, it's obviously an unknown object. The pilots were informed that they were going to, you know, be pitted against these things. It's just a natural action that, you know, to find out how pilots will react to one of these being in the vicinity. We didn't really see it on our TV screens anyway over here in the UK until I think 1991 during the Gulf War, and then we went, oh, that's a new toy. You know, that's incredible what we've got. Unbeknown to us, though, they were flying that around and test flying 73 in 1974. So, you know, it was more likely identified as an unusual object flying extremely fast throughout the skies, and probably not exactly known as for what it was. So if we move that same scenario on as time goes on, we always got to keep that in the back of our mind, that some things that we might have some incredible capabilities, and people are going to see them. Because you know what, I don't think the military care too much about the fact that people will report it as a UFO. You know, it keeps it under that shroud of exotic type of secret aircraft. You know, it just diminishes the story straight away when people say it's a UFO. It takes the blame away from them straight away.
That's got to work for the government too, though.
That does happen. That does happen sometimes.
Yeah, that works for the government. That's in their favor, the scapegoat of the UFO when they're testing things. Because if you think about it, the FA-22 Raptor was a black project being tested in the late 80s, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, and it wasn't until like the mid 90s till it defeated its rival, the YF. So it's very feasible. And I mean, look at the capabilities of the FA-22 Raptor. It's insane what it could do.
I know it is.
And so then you wonder what's in black projects now.
Exactly, and that's the stuff we do know.
Right. I mean, the B-2 bomber still looks alien to me to this day. Still.
Well, do you know what? I think there's a lot of secrecy around the B-2 bomber, and I think, well, I kind of get it. The fact is, you can go and see these at air displays and stuff, you know, but, you know, you're not going to get too close to it. And I think it's probably because of how they're pushing energy through the wings to allow the craft to maybe reduce its weight value to some degree, so it can take off and land on short runways. The technology that's involved in that is probably quite sensitive, and that's why people don't get too close to the bombers very often. But even that's old now, if you actually look from when that was first manufactured, and then they had that problem regarding the khaki paint, or the cark paint, or whatever they were using. And of course, even that's old technology now. You know, it moves so fast, technology. It's hard to imagine what we really currently have. Well,
I'm glad you said that, because our technology moves fast. Now imagine advanced life form and their technologies jumps. I mean, you know, the Tic Tac was made famous because David Fravor spotted it in an F-18 and his crew. But that item has been seen for a long time. It's
nothing new, the Tic Tac shapes. No, they've been seen for quite some years. So, they called it was cigar shaped, it was cylindrical, and you know, it's lit up. But you know, keep in mind when they spot, when the pilots are on this, it's daylight. And the only reason I think they light up at night is because whatever energy source they're utilizing causes the atmosphere around them to react to it. Is what I think, anyway. Absolutely. I mean, I tell you from some of the research that we've done is that they're utilizing light, some of this light to create lift across the metamaterial construction of these things. The metamaterials react to terahertz frequency, helps give them lift. Even some of the most recent experiments on metamaterial analysis that Hal Putov's lab, he has already come forward amongst a number of other people and giving us little clues as to where these tests are up to on these metamaterials. And they're saying, you know, they can create lift to the point of almost anti-gravity. So by applying certain different frequencies of light to them. So if we're looking at applying frequencies of light to them to keep them aloft, then it's quite obvious that some of these crafts might be able to surround themselves in light, which is part and parcel of the lift and maneuverabilities, you know. So we have to consider maybe they're utilizing a form of physics that we really haven't got our head around quite yet.
Yeah, you know, I watch a lot of documentaries, and over the years, I remember watching a scientist experiment with sound waves and making things levitate with sound waves. And then when you increase the frequencies of that, it could interact and heat up the air around it, which would light up.
Oh yeah. It gives itself its aura around the objects. It is interesting. I think the true phenomena, though, is so varied. I mean, we are not only dealing with varied crafts which seem to be physical in nature, but then we're also dealing with things which are seemingly don't have the physiological barriers we'd expect them to have if they were normal craft, being able to pass through solid items, for an example, passing into water without leaving a wake, into hill-sized cliffs and volcanoes, you know, and we're dealing with a quad medium travel rather than a trans-medium travel in many cases on some of these objects. And I think it's interesting to note that the amount of variety of these things is that it's very easy to put them all under the same banner, you know, but I think on a number of different things, some of which seem to be plasma and not physical objects at all. And some of them are physical, as we know, because from the early days, you know, from crashes and so on and so forth. So it gets very complicated as to what type of phenomena we're really seeing here. Are we dealing with some type of intelligent plasma-like type life forms or something? Or are these physical crafts with auras around them? And if so, how can they pass into things without leaving a physical wake or being able to pass into hills and volcanoes? It really does open it up into numerous different areas of what a UFO or UAP, if you want to call it that, really consists of.
Yeah, when it comes to the physics behind it, I'm lost. But when I hear about the non-physical kind of plasma thing, I always default to the idea of what we would do in military applications. And that, because of it being all energy, would make a great recon, right? It could go out there and like our drones, you go out there and look ahead and figure out and measure things. And then they could communicate to other ships, so allow the other ships to know the dimensions of what they're looking for. Or maybe just trying to spot something particular for them to find interest in. I mean,
absolutely. I mean, I'm in a number of inner circles and think tanks and things, and I'll tell you where we currently are. The whole theory of that, the extraterrestrial hypothesis of traveling vast distances of space in nuts and bolts craft, has gone well out the window. Well out the window. I mean, that's what my mentors taught me back in the early 80s. I mean, that's what I was accepting. But as time's gone on, I've kind of realized, oh no, the UFO or UAP phenomenon consists of so much more. And then it has these intrinsic paranormal connections, which and psi phenomena as well. I mean, there's many people that have stated, if you really want to know about UFOs, how much do we know about psi phenomena and consciousness? Some of these are far more than just nuts and bolts craft traveling the vast distances of space. In fact, the strongest hypothesis, which has always been the extraterrestrial hypothesis, is usually the weakest. In fact, it is the weakest of all to provide the evidence for that these things are extraterrestrial, because we seem to become reliant on what we're told by the occupants, that they come from this planet or they come from this star. And there are lots of stories from contactees and abductees about different things like that. But that's where that evidence is derived from. It's from what we've been told. And if that's the case, then we have to question, how are so many UFOs visiting Earth on a regular basis? We would expect to see some type of superhighway traveling backwards and forwards from Earth. Though we do get some, occasional activity in the orbit, we're not seeing a superhighway, which is interesting. So the big question is, where are all the UFOs coming from? Because there are plenty of them seen on a daily basis around the planet. So much so, we'd have to say, well, we'd expect to see a huge amount of traffic going backwards and forwards. That doesn't seem to be the case. It doesn't seem to be enough evidence to support that. So my question would be, is it a ruse? Have we been given information since the days of Roswell going on from there on to fall in line with that hypothesis that these things are traveling the vast distances of space? Maybe not. And if they are extraterrestrial, then, who's to say they haven't reached an advancement that they don't need to travel the vast distances of space? There are better ways of utilizing astrophysics and things like that, and that we're just currently not aware of.
I agree. So I kind of have a theory I'll give to you. And it's evolved since I've been doing this. The gray aliens, my theory running is that they're an advanced robotic machine, like let's say a robot and biology advanced with the consciousness uploaded, right? So they could upload their consciousness to them. Because like you said, to cross the vastness of space, and I heard this on Lex Friedman, it would take 10,000 generations with our technology anyhow. That being said, I think the Greys are an advanced robotic being with an uploaded consciousness. And I think the ones that people are seeing on the ships, if you look at what we can do today, as far as like projections, who's to say their technology is not so advanced that being's projecting to that site? They could be elsewhere and projecting there for you to see them. And it could be very physical because their technology would be that advanced.
We've really got to get out there thinking of our normal physics.
Yeah.
And consider the possibilities of the stuff we don't know and don't understand quite yet. Throughout history, if you go back right to beginning times of contact cases, they go back into ancient times quite clearly. And there are over 2,000 varied entities, all bipedal, of course, which is a very Star Trek-y theme as far as I'm concerned.
Right.
I mean, we were told that life throughout the universe would be that varied because of the variations throughout how people would live on different planets and the variations on those planets. You know, would they all be bipedal? Would they be all, you know, 2 arms, 2 legs, a head, 2 eyes, and a mouth? You know, and would we even understand life if it came? And this is the early days, what we used to get told. But according to the information, over 2,000 different varied types of entities. And if they are coming from different planets, that's over 2,000 different planets, some of which seemingly act the same way, some of which don't. You know, and we get told so many different things. It's so confusing throughout the different era of contact, be it the Space Brothers, be it the Greys, or whatever. You know, it gets so confusion sets in, and it gets bogged down in the details. There is a phenomena. It's at play. It's been at play for, as far as I'm concerned, for thousands and thousands of years. It's been interacting with humanity long before even historical documentation, as far as I'm aware. But the phenomena doesn't seem to change so much, but the mask or the front of the phenomena does seem to vary as time's gone on. And now, of course, since obviously what was it, around about since the 61, we had small beings, you know, from the Betty Barney Hill case, but they weren't clearly greys in the sense, but they were small beings, wearing caps, of course. And then we into the 1980s, we had a lot of the grey stuff. The 1950s and stuff, you know, we had the humanoid type ones, Nordics and Pleiadians and stuff. And I always think to myself, well, you know what, the phenomena's the same in a sense of speaking, but it's the front of it, the face of the phenomena seems to alter as time goes through from era to era. And that's what I find really fascinating, is the fact that, you know, people from 70 years ago or currently can have a case wrote down and it's exactly the same type of experiences that they're having, and yet they're so completely, the visual aspects of these cases are completely far apart. And that makes me wonder, are we dealing with a phenomena? Are we truly seeing the face of this phenomena? Or are we being manipulated in some way that they allow us to perceive them for what we want to perceive them to be, or they want them to be perceived them to be? That's questionable and problematic, because we like to say what we see is fact. And I don't think we can really do that with some of these cases.
Well, I'm glad you said that, because circling back to what I was saying about them, the beings themselves being projections, we're talking about an advanced life form, right? So over the course of time, sure, they could allow us to see them as they choose, right? Because it's a really advanced projection. I can almost take a materialistic kind of view to it. The only thing consistent that I could see through the massive time of the gray aliens, and that's what leads me to believe they're robotic or they're created, because they're all identical in height, size, and, you know, if you're asking me, the eyes in them, and I'll give this to you, Steve, the eyes, I think those are scanners and cameras, and, you know what I mean, and sensors.
Yeah,
every case I read about those, it's the same thing, the way they look at them. And when people are telling me this, in my mind, I'm viewing something scanning you the way they're looking. That's the one thing that comes to mind with that.
Absolutely, yeah. I certainly believe that they are some type of biological construct. It's very interesting that in 1985, Dr. Jacques Vallée, who was quite a well-known researcher in the subject of UFOs, has been for many years, he constructed the very first computer system, an artificial intelligence computer system, to try and come up with the conclusion, when he fed all this data in from all around the world, and going back hundreds of years, he tried to see if he could have a system that could give a feasible conclusion as to what it was. I don't think it was up to the scratch then, you know, to be honest with you. But now with the computer technology that we have, there is a computer system, and I think it's nicknamed the YARS system after the people that made it. And they fed in years and years of information. Now, this goes back not just hundreds, into the 1,000 years, from different types of contact experiences allegedly that took place with ancient civilizations, to the serpent gods, to the up to the more current ones, or some of the ones which are just totally profound. And after doing all that throughout ufology, they started to feed in all the paranormal cases, hauntings and poltergeist disturbances, and then they fed in the cryptid type stuff, the strange dogmen and werewolf type creatures, the skinwalkers, and they fed all this into the system. And this clever artificial intelligence system, which is pretty state of the art, came up with a conclusion which was quite, well, this is what it said. It said it believed that there was a singular source responsible, which has the capabilities of creating physiological constructs. Now, what that's basically saying is, and how it derived to that answer was, a single source is because it looked at cases 3 years old, 100 years old, 500 years old, from 8 different sides of the planet. And it looked at them and analysed them and realised very quickly that there are key locations within those cases where it's the exact same phenomena taking place. So time didn't really come into play here. You'd expect something considerably different over periods of time. And then it also looked at the phenomena itself, such as the elements of the cryptids. We know through research that some cryptid incidents have been highly well documented, show the evidence of paranormal acoustics, that the acoustics surrounding this phenomena is amplified to ridiculous levels sometimes, more so than it should be, to generate fear. There's an S factor experience during some of those cases as well. Many of them report the sudden stillness, the sudden emptiness or void of any sound in those environments, and the possibility of infrasonic sounds being generated. Again, fear frequencies, manipulation. Sulfur's been smelled, through many cases of those type of cryptid sightings. And then we start to look at the paranormal and see where those are attributed, and yes, they are. And the UFO stuff as well. So this is how this computer kind of come to this conclusion, that there may be one singular source responsible for multiple layers of this phenomena around the world. And not only that, but it believed that this phenomena has the capabilities of physiological constructs. And it worked that out because it kind of worked out that a lot of these cases, sometimes they get it wrong. The phenomena gets it wrong. I mean, if we just look at the Intruders type book, which was wrote with Bud Hopkins, and some of the major incidents that took place there with people who were having those experiences with UFOs and occupants, sometimes they'd see these beings, and sometimes they looked like there were too many of them to fit in the craft. And when they actually identified the craft and asked to draw it, they described it as something from the 1950s with portholes and rivets. It's as if somehow they didn't get it quite right. And there are hundreds and hundreds of cases like that where it just doesn't seem to have got it right sometimes, and that's what kind of led it to the idea of these are physiological constructs, which occasionally they make mistakes, and witnesses report those things.
That's 2 points to that. I'll give you 2 points to that. I say this a lot too. Often when they speak about advanced life forms and us, we're ants, right? So yeah. Let's go to that scale. You and I are walking in the park. We see an ant mound, and we'll even rewind time. We look down at this ant mound, and they're using swords, and they're having battles in the field, and they're using complex languages to communicate with one another. We're gonna study that, and we're gonna want to see their evolution, and of course, we're gonna want to experiment. Just like what I'm hearing now. This sounds like everything I hear about the paranormal or ufology, I always say, what would we do if it were us doing this? And it sounds like we're an experiment. And further to that, so here's the kicker to that. We're going to want to see the evolution of these ants through the course of their entire existence, with minimizing them knowing about us anyhow. It would definitely sound to me like, just like you said, these are ancient people, different parts of the globe. There's no way they're communicating to see or communicate about what they're seeing, especially then. Yeah. So now we go to the thought of multiple ant piles that are showing intelligence, and they're scattered through the park. And at scale, It's a billion miles away from them. But for us, it's walking distance.
Yeah.
We would absolutely run an experiment to see the differences of their evolution, to see how things come along. And eventually they come to know one another. Obviously wars, because that's just the way biology goes, I guess. But one consistent thing I hear in all these cases are these orbs. And one thing I hear consistently is that they're not physical, but they give off a heat source, right? Even the paranormal people, when they started using the FLIR cameras, were getting heat signatures, which to me sounds like like a drone recon thing. All right,
and they are present throughout all areas. I mean, the orb phenomenon. I mean, it's many countless years old. The orb phenomenon, but we tend to hear it more so during the Second World War Foo Fighters. We have it in the paranormal just as much, and in fact, physical balls of light, which have been seen and photographed during a number of cases. The Jackie Hernandez case was one of them. And they illuminated so much that they lit the wall and they lit the carpet below them, and were physically seen as well. If these are drones of some sort or something which is kind of monitoring or associated to these things, then we have to say, well, it crosses those boundaries. It crosses from the paranormal to the ufological, or it's all one of the same. Because really, it's too coincidence to see the same thing throughout all genres of these studies, without thinking that there might be some connection between them.
There's definitely a parallel. Now, let me give you the idea to that. Now we're watching the ants, and they have a place in the park, and they call it Skinwalker Ranch, and we're watching them. And so now you're imagining the advanced life form is monitoring you to see how things are going, and blah blah blah. And then we notice an apparition. And, for an advanced life form, monitoring a living biological entity, and then we see an apparition. Now our interest is piqued. Now we got to know what the hell that is. And so thus the experiments continue and get greater in scale. I mean, can you imagine?
Yeah, I think, Skinwalker Ranch is just one of those locations. There are numerous locations like Skinwalker Ranch. We don't get to hear them so much. In fact, I know of one called the Meadows. And it isn't the Meadows, it's actually two ranches together. And they are situated. I can't go into the details of where that location is. I can tell you in the US.
Right.
I can tell you that they're more active than Skinwalker at this moment in time. There are a number of scientists which have been involved in the research of this place over the last 48 months. But it's these key locations of, well, first you look at the geology of the land. First similarity is that they both lie in a positive magnetic region of 250 nanoteslas. They both are historically associated to the phenomena, and very associated to the geology of the land itself, in other words, land phenomena. What is also reported is a multiple type disturbances of paranormal, supernatural, cryptid, UFO, time displacements, all very unusual things there, very unusual. Key experiments that have been taking place at these locations over the years have gone quietly, and raises its head after some years after usually finishing those experiments, like it did at Skinwalker with the NIDS Foundation being involved. And it takes some time to start finding out exactly what the situation was. Well, for scientists it's difficult because, they get excited. The fact is that they're witnessing phenomena and they want answers. And to obtain those answers, they conduct a series of experiments to see how much they can, try and get the phenomena to react, to engage, communicate, those sort of things. Does it have limitations? The downside of that, which people didn't realize, obviously, at the time, there are a number of people that are picking up on it now, that sometimes this phenomena has a sting in its tail and can cause havoc in your life in regarding negativities. Apart from, they used to identify these things as multiple serendipities or the most strangest of coincidences continuing. But even after leaving those locations, after conducting years of experiments, people are starting to come forward, just as Robert Bigelow has now, and talks about, that he kind of wished he never had as so much involvement in the experiments conducted at Skinwalker, and the reasons why is because of the negativity that seemingly attached itself to him and ran havoc through his life and his family and so on and so forth. He said he's not the only one. There are a number of other people that have experienced the same thing. So if that is the case, then, we have to question, is there areas where it's not safe to continue on thorough and experimental research with some of this phenomenon when we quite clearly don't quite understand it? I think it has to be done over a longer period of time, but I think we have to tread carefully sometimes as well.
I think we're not there yet with technology to do that. I'll tell you why. Is it dangerous there? Absolutely. Because now you're in the lab of an advanced life form. That's their petri dish. They're observing us. They see an apparition, and can you imagine? They're watching us like, what the hell is that now? It's real, but it's not real. So to them, that's again piques their interest. Now we're bringing our technology over there, and we're trying to observe it ourselves, and we're in their experiment. So when people are like, well, why don't they have video from there? And why does everything malfunction? It's because if it were us, let's reverse the roles. We're the ones watching that place. We're going to be like, what the hell are they doing? This is our experiment. We're going to shut their cameras down. We're going to cause fear and move them out of our petri dish because we're the ones we want to study that now. That's fascinating. There's something that's here that's not biological. And then, you're talking about an advanced life form. If let's say my theory is correct, they're advanced robots with their consciousness uploaded. Well, they have achieved immortality. So they wouldn't understand the paranormal, right? But when they witness it, it would be very interesting, and they're going to want to study it, and they're going to want us out of the way. So I think that's part of the anomaly there. And do I think it's dangerous? My answer is absolutely.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think some of this phenomenon is generated to clear you out the area sometimes, especially some of the scary incidents that people, they generate fear, so much fear. When we interviewed people, they said, you know what, I've been in these woods all my life. I know the area really well. Never bothered me. I grew up with it. But on this occasion, I was filled with so much dread, which is beyond normal fear, that I just can't understand where that came from. And it's as if it's induced into those individuals. And it's like, get out of here. It's clear out that area. Get out of here. We don't want you here. I think, it works really well. People don't stay around for very long when they're having those type of experiences. I think in some cases, if it's not an experiment, then they actually are just wanting us to move from that locality.
Yeah, I agree. Think about what fear is. It's a chemical response to a psychological input that spreads to the body. And if you think about what we could do with science, we could manipulate waves in the air. We could manipulate tension. You could feel those same, if you walk into a room and there's people and they've been fighting, they're angry and there's hostility, and you just walk into a room unknowing this, you could still feel that. It's very real. Yeah. We could sense it. So I don't doubt that I think we could do it. In fact, I know we can. Our CIA has definitely experimented with the idea of causing fear with chemical response in the air. I know we could do it.
Oh, of course it has. There have been plenty of things on that regarding fear frequencies and how to crowd control and all sorts of different things. What's interesting about some of these cryptid incidents, which are sometimes been associated to UFOs. UFOs have been seen in proximity, which is very interesting, is the fact that sometimes the whole process of this is to generate fear. Very much like a poltergeist case, it's about generation of fear. And that vexation cycle gets stronger and stronger until somebody comes along and tries to assist those individuals. What's interesting is when I picked out about 20 of the most significant cryptic cases, where we're looking at the highest generation of fear. And, some of these things have been seen, 9 foot tall, kind of dogman, werewolf type thing. This took place in Ohio. Chased 4 guys down a train track, a disused train track. And of course, not easy to run over. One of them actually fell. And like a rabbit in a headlights, they just froze. Absolutely froze in fear, because as this thing got up to him, the other guys looked round and were expecting him to be sort of ripped apart by this thing, because, clearly that's what it wanted to do. But at that very point, when it couldn't advance any further, stood up over this guy, growling and snarling. It's as if it didn't know what to do then. And what they result in doing is running away. Exactly the same happened with some type of strange skinwalker type creature that was trying to get into a house. The two teenagers, girl and boy, always my brother and sister, were absolutely howling in tears, frightened to death. This thing was rattling the handle of the door and growling and banging. It was as you would do, as if you were trying to scare somebody. And of course, the father that was upstairs, who was fast asleep, he's a no-nonsense guy, don't believe in any of this. Hears all the racket, comes flying down and heads to the front door. What's going on? The kids are screaming at him, "Don't open the door, Dad, don't open the door." And what's he do? He opens the door and comes face to face with this thing. And what I found was quite funny was it was a bit like one of those spaghetti western films, that standoff. It's like neither party knew what to do. He was stood there, kind of bemused as to what he's trying to figure out, what he's looking at. And this thing's looking at him, trying to figure out, what do I do now? And it just ran off. It's like the whole purpose of this is about fear generation. A bit like the poltergeist stuff that happens. And there is no plan to do when it fails. It's like, well, you know what, that's over with, and they move on.
I agree. It's like part of an experiment, if you think about it, it's funny because to date, we've never heard the news say tonight on the news, man killed by Yeti. We've never heard that, so.
And that's what, it's all about the experience,
Yeah, I think so. Like, again.
What makes me think it's down to tests and experiments.
Yes.
And other things.
I say the same. If I'm an advanced life form, here's the unfortunate part for humanity. Not maybe so. You got to think of it. An advanced life form, they probably don't view currency the same. They probably don't view necessity like jewelry the same. They don't look, if you're that advanced and you're traveling to study us, the last thing on your mind is what pair of shoes you're wearing. You don't care. You're beyond that. But for us, we go to another planet, right? When we get to that point, here's my theory that too, by the way. I think that the life out there, outside of whatever is advanced, I think there's a lot of Bronze Age and a lot of Stone Age life forms out there. And if there are some that are more advanced than us, who's to say they're not locked to their environment? Their intelligence, they're in the water where they live. They can't escape their environment. They're trapped. But that aside, I think if we went somewhere and found a primitive life form, top of it would be, let's study them. Let's see what's going on. Where are they at in life? Can we help influence them without ruining the natural way of things? And let's experiment. Let's see how they react to this or how they react to that. We do this shit in labs.
We probably would do the same thing.
Yeah, we do it in labs right now. We scare animals to death.
Would likely be perceived to be very similar as well, because how would a lesser life form consider us to suddenly land in in one of our aircrafts and conduct these tests and do that and the other? We'd probably be perceived to be something very similar. The problem for us now, though, is that with these new areas of research, it's like going back to the beginning again and trying to figure out now, okay, we're starting at a different point. We're starting to realize the connectivity between all this phenomena. It certainly has a connection with consciousness and how we perceive the phenomena. It's manipulative, it's deceptive in many cases. Where do we go now? Because the old theory that paranormal only represents spiritual life forms from which once lived on Earth, to these are extraterrestrial beings just like us, but traveling from a distant planet. I mean, those theories are dissolving, and we need to know now, how do we approach these subjects, not just by gathering data, which we'll always do, but trying to chip away and try and advance the subject as to where do we go from here and what's the next best thing to do. A lot of it, I think, we have to start learning about ourselves and how we are being manipulated and interact with this phenomena, and that's problematic because we know very little about, the psychology of the human brain.
Yeah. I referenced the animal kingdom and what we do there. When we want to study the lions, we study the lions. We get our teams, we go to cameras, we're out there. We don't get involved. Even if their cubs are being attacked by another animal, we don't get involved. Unless we hit one with our car, then we're obligated. Like Travis Walton. He was
Yes.
hurt by them. They abducted him only because they had to fix him. That they're obligated.
Yeah, to fix him. Yeah, exactly. I mean, Travis changed his tunes over the years, and I think he started to realise some years ago that, well, hang on a second, these guys might have just saved my life. You know, I might have been, too nosy, been in the wrong place, been in the wrong time, and unfortunately, I got zapped, and these guys saved my life. And then the concept of being away for five days might not be his concept. It's our concept that he's disappeared for 5 days. For him, it could have only been gone an hour. Who's to know what there are people that have reported strange time differences during these experiences. So we don't really know. Was he gone for 5 days, or was he, to us, yes. But to him, might not have been. He was, he may have been unconscious just for a few hours, all we know.
Well, yeah. I mean, if you're on the theory of they could manipulate portals, sure. Because then wherever they go for an hour, the Earth is still spinning here. And when you come back, those days have passed.
Exactly. Which might lead to the fact that why is the flying saucer still a flying saucer now? Why is it not transitioned over thousands or hundreds of years to something else? I mean, if that is the case and we can just pop in and pop out at different times, that might reference the fact that, well, we still have flying saucers. People still report flying saucers.
Yeah. I mean, well, think of it this way. Like the Tic Tac, the flying saucer, the gimbal, the Ferrari, the Cadillac, the bus, they have their purpose. They're just, all that's going to happen is they're going to get upgraded through time. They're going to be made, nicer. And so why, if it ain't broken, don't fix it. It's working.
Exactly, yeah. I mean, maybe they've reached perfection with something. They're quite happy. They might not even think like us. We always go out for the new model, don't we? Maybe they don't think like that,
No, yeah, they can't. They're more if you're studying a race of people, another planet, you're not showing up in the Ferrari. You're going in something that works, something practical, right?
Yeah.
It's tested. It knows it's going to do the job. And as we get, people say, well, if they're so intelligent, how do they crash? Well, when they first started coming here over time, just like man, when they try their new model out, it's the brand new 1947 disc, and it got hit by lightning. And how could they possibly know? So damn it, it's broken. So it's just the truth of it. Like nothing is perfect. Nothing.
It is very true. It's very true. And the fact is that people have reported, that flying saucers just like from the 1950s, even nowadays. I mean, in fact, I've got a photograph from almost the year 2000, was it? About 1999. And it was a when we looked at the very good photographs and when we actually analysed the photographs, it was exactly the same as the 1965 Heflin UFO photos. No difference. In fact, it could have been the same craft as far as we're concerned. There's no difference whatsoever. And we have to look at that and say, okay, that's interesting. We're not seeing such a duration of time change these things. And maybe we have to come up with the theories, why is that? And like you said, maybe it's just they don't think like us. Maybe we always want to go up and get the upgrade. Maybe. Yeah.
Well, think in terms of, I always think about our military before anything else. Why? If you told the government tomorrow, we had the FA-22 Raptor, you never have to change the way it looks, but it'll perform better and better every year. But it'll look the same. We're just going to upgrade its software and its engine. Hell yeah, they're doing that. That's a big money saver.
Hospitals just keep doing the same thing. Exactly.
Yeah, so I mean, same for them. All they have to do is upgrade. For them, in my imagination, for them, an upgrade is something with software. I mean, you listen to Bob Lazar and how he described what he saw. Seamless. There's no nuts, no bolts, no sticks, which led me down the road of why I think the aliens are ultimately in advanced robotics with the consciousness uploaded, because you see somebody that has no steering wheel, no radio, no cup holders. Yeah. Just seamless.
Does seem to be consciously driven. And apart from that, I think there was also those craft which might not even be occupied. I mean, during some of the early experiments with remote viewing in Ingo Swan, he referenced a number of occasions when he was asked to remote view some of these objects. Actually, I think he was taken somewhere in South America at one time, very secretively, to a location where one of these triangular objects was seen over a period of weeks taking water from the lakes. And on this particular occasion, he was on site. They must have had some data that one of these things was coming in or something, and they got there and he saw this thing and he was asked to remote view it. And what he was really startled about is not that it didn't have any occupants, but somehow it was conscious and was aware of him remote viewing it. And I think that's what scared him the most.
Well, yeah. I mean, remote viewing's energy. you're using energy from what I read anyway. And these objects are controlled by pure energy, like ghosts and apparitions. These are my personal belief. Your consciousness is actually your soul, and it's pure energy. Yes, so these are things at an energy level that they could detect, which is why, circling back to the whole skinwalker, they're watching us and they see an apparition because it's energy. They're like, what the hell is that?
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we had our members of our own team there in October 2019. Though that the phenomena was still present, it had relocated itself to the perimeters of the ranch. Though it was recorded and photographed by our team, the phenomenon is still present. But what was interesting is that with interviews with people throughout that location, they don't, they're very superstitious. They don't like to talk about, the things they see, their experiences that they have. But there are many people which are suffering illnesses, which is not good, and these illnesses are seemingly connected to magnetic frequencies, even possible radiation, things like that. So there's something obviously going on around these locations over long periods of time, and people living those in conditions wouldn't realize. But there seems to be some type of physiological effect on hundreds of people living around those locations. But they don't want to talk. They don't want to talk about it, really.
Yeah, that's strange. If you think about it, what happens when you ever see, you probably haven't. There's a show a long time ago called Future Weapons. And
oh, yeah.
Yeah, on that show, they have that thing where it's a speaker, and they're using sound waves, and it could actually collapse your lungs or make you sick, physically sick. Now, think about something advanced that's using this not even for harmful reasons, for manipulating its environment, for, you got to understand, this is altering the physics of its surroundings. So people around these phenomena, of course they're going to definitely have a negative reaction to that. And,
Yeah, that's exactly how it seems to be, and not just around Skinwalker. It's other places around the world,
right?
Basically, like Skinwalker, we're seeing the same effects of people living there over long durations of time, having the same type of illnesses being reported. Nobody seems to be making any great effort to try and find out why, which I find interesting. But they're all similar reports, and I would have to say, well, it looks to be the effects of high EMF and radiation, to be honest with you. But, it's not your normal type of normal radiation because, people have gone out there and done radiation tests. Sometimes they get spikes. Sometimes they get, heavy areas of radiation for very short periods of time, because we know radiation is usually quite long lasting. And that's what's also profound, because you do get high spikes there, but they'll diminish very quickly. It could be a couple of days and it's gone. And that's very unusual for radiation to act in that manner, because as we know, you just look at some of these plants which have had spillages or accidents, they can't go to those locations for years. And yet, some of these spikes are tremendously high, but very, very short-lived, as if it's controlled areas of being able to apply and diminish the radiation.
Yeah, when you're saying this, what comes to my mind is someone opened the door where the radiation's stored and then closed it right away.
Yeah,
and then you think about what a portal is, right? You open a portal, and you're basically opening space and time in one location, and then closing it. So it's a scary thought, because it could just happen, and to the best of our intelligence, we can't figure it out. Who's to say it's a scary thought?
I mean, I think what was interesting is something like 4 years ago, NASA came forward with some information. And I remember reading it and doing a double take on it, because I thought, is NASA just said, am I reading this right? NASA's just said portals exist. And it was part of the MMS mission. And that considered of 4 satellites, size of about a car, sent out into the near orbit of Earth. And we're analysing what they refer to as the professional name for a portal was an electron diffusion region. And they said they're sustainable, they're real, they're there, and they think that they're sussing out how these things may be created. These are more natural air pockets that seem to appear and dissipate. Some of them, though, will last longer, and some of them are larger. And they put out a little video. It's actually on the YouTube somewhere. It's knocking about on the well-known NASA website somewhere as well. NASA portals, and they actually start looking at it. They actually refer to them as portals, and I thought, well, that's interesting. What else don't we know? Are there natural areas where some type of phenomena could be utilizing? Because it doesn't seem to me that they're traversing all these distances and vastness of space. But what if they could manage to traverse utilizing things that we just currently don't understand yet? And when you talk about portals, though that the word has never been appealing for me, because I always thought portals about fantasy type stuff, but then we're finding areas around the planet that there's key types of activity. And there was a report in 1982 from the United States military that they were looking at 7 locations around the planet of very high potent positive magnetic regions and its connection to UFOs. And when the people started interviewing the people that lived around those locations, there was no surprise. They said, oh yeah, we see them all the time, it's not a problem. But they seem to appear from nowhere. They just appear in the sky as if they materialize and dematerialize in these key locations. We were trying to figure out, some people might sort of refer to these as, well, there's a portal there of some sort. But what was interesting is that within a 5-mile area surrounding this location, there was not only the considerable amount of UFOs seen on a regular basis, which people got used to, but there was a heightened amount of paranormal activity taking place in people's homes throughout that location, more so than you would expect.
Think about this. When you're using a portal, you're using crazy, the power of the sun energy, and you don't know what doorways you're opening when you're so they open a portal to come here from wherever it is they're coming from. But, what if you're tapping into a parallel universe or a supernatural? You don't know what you're opening alongside of that. That's, it's dangerous business. And to what you said earlier about the cosmic highway, 20 years ago, if you said when you looked out into space with a telescope, it was darkness and you could see stars everywhere with essentially other star systems. Anyhow, now we see this cosmic web connects everything.
Oh, yes.
Everything's connected. So if you think in terms of that with this cosmic web and they're utilizing that, and like when I say everything connected, legitimately, the dark matter now we could see, and coming soon, by the way. This month, in fact, we're launching the James Webb Telescope.
Yes.
Infrared.
That should be.
We're going to find, I promise you, we're going to see amazing things in the next year or two. We're going to find amazing things. And this cosmic highway that you and I are discussing, that might come to fruition more than you know. Because again, when I go to that cosmic web and I see everything connected, it lets me know there's a source to everything somewhere.
There is. Yeah, absolutely.
And like a nerve system, you could travel that cosmic web like a nerve system. Like, so if they're capable of transmitting their anything they want to travel with into the form of energy or however using that cosmic web, traveling for them might be easier than what we think.
Yes.
Flip side, they're opening these portals. And why is there paranormal activity there? And why is all the abnormalities and sickness? You're using a lot of energy in one space. And, there's no manual out there, not even for an advanced life form to say what the repercussions of that may be.
Well, yeah, exactly. I mean, it's interesting. I mean, I think it was only recently a number of scientists came forward and said from the understanding of the visuals and the data that they've got, is they were leaning on the fact that the universe we see is some type of construct. And I found that very interesting because I've heard the referencing to constructs many times, how we even experience reality, and how sometimes, the reality that we know isn't exactly the reality it might be, and how people perceive that reality might even differ. And you start to get into all the concepts of consciousness and how individuals will experience reality around them. You start to think, well, how much is manipulated? How much is a construct? And do we really have, the ability to make those changes, or is something else responsible for that? Because we all have all these hiccups and strange things and massive coincidences happen, which are beyond just weirdness. And you think to yourself, it's as if something's at play here. There's a mechanism or something that's just going on within reality. We know that we can't break the rules, but it certainly seems that reality can be bent to some degree through the process of, we've had years and years of research conducted in spiritual communications, and we have physical phenomena manifestations, real things we can pick up and feel. And we know that, well, how can that be? How can something come from a non-physical source to a physical source within our reality? Are we utilizing, are we capable of creating these things as these constructs through this conjuring process? Like C5. What's going on with C5? If you got, no different than a spiritual seance with 5 mediums around the table, you take 5 meditators out to a location and summon a UFO, and suddenly something is seen and recorded or reported. How much do we have play into it? I always think maybe it's not as black and white as we think. There are lots of grey areas here between what is the physical world we know and what are things that we can capably manufacture, or even a phenomena capably manufacture.
Right. Yeah. It's all on perception, right? When I hear about these guys, there's like 5 of them groups and they're going out there meditating. Understand, the human brain is way more powerful than we give it credit for. We don't even use all of it. I don't think we can. I think we lose our mind. It's a supercomputer. So I think what they're doing when they're meditating is not so much summoning than they are being able to perceive what's already there. I mean, we know we're being observed.
It could be that, yeah. I mean, a lot of people are starting to sort of come to the idea that this phenomena could be right under our noses.
Yeah, I mean, think about this.
Yeah.
A lot of people, and I'm not saying everyone, but the majority of people have head injury they're capable of pretty amazing shit afterward. Some people play a piano, but you're opening a doorway in the mind that perhaps now that's why they see more UFOs than us, because their perception allows for it. So when I hear these people meditating, they're allowing themselves to perceive what's already there,
Yes.
And it takes channeling and discipline. Focus is one of those things. Like if you want to play pool really well, you got to focus. And what is focus? It's meditation at a different rate.
Absolutely.
So, yeah,
I do some number of experiments done in the UK and Scotland a number of years ago about people who were lucky. And there was a questionnaire about, if you fell down the stairs and you broke your leg, was you lucky you didn't break your neck, or was you unlucky that you broke your leg? And we found people which considered themselves to be always lucky. And what's interesting is that the amount of luck that they had, seemingly, was achievable, was that they were actually, had better odds in luck. So what they did is they decided to sit them down on an experiment. And what this was in a room where they had like a pyramid shape on the wall of channels where ping pong balls would fall down, and they'd fall into these channels. Now, just randomly letting this machine run, you could see that they would generally fall. The ping pongs would generally fall into the channels, and at the end of the result would look a bit like a pyramid shape, with the highest ones being in the middle. What they did is they asked the people who thought they were lucky to sit down and see if they could manipulate the results. And what they found is that the people that considered themselves to be lucky is that somehow they were manipulating the results, the flow of the balls and how they actually went through these channels, so that you could actually clearly see, visually see, that it wasn't doing what it would normally be doing. It didn't work with those who thought they were unlucky. It worked with those that thought they were lucky. As I say, somehow they were bending the rules by willing it to happen. And if that is the case, then we have to consider how much can we apply ourselves to our lives and reality and changing things around us, the environment, our lifestyle, the things we achieve in life. May be that there is this play where we can interact with that reality if our mindset is for it.
I agree. I call that the Jedi Factor, right? Yeah, I'll tell you why. Because for me, luck, as you're explaining this, I'm already depicting in my mind what it is. We're manipulating energy. So what's luck? Confidence. You can make your own luck if you're confident. And if you believe to a certainty in your mind you're lucky, the energies that your body possesses, you don't know how it is moving outward. We don't know yet. Soon we will. Soon we're going to be able to scan each other and see what energies we're putting out there. And the people we're calling lucky typically walk around with a different kind of confidence, and they don't exude it in such a way where it's like, I'm better than you. Some of them are just lucky because they walk around with a very optimistic point of view, and that optimism converts to confidence in everything they're going to do, and they can manipulate the energy around them completely.
It lends hand to the fact that we're not just reality. It's not just a normal reality, a machine which just plays out as it normally would play, and we can't manipulate it. It seems that we can. And if that is the case, then, how do we even think, well, what is reality then? If we can create things and change it to be more beneficial, it's the same for the people which are negative, pessimists and things like that.
Absolutely.
They go on through life, just having hardship over and over and over again. And it's a shame because you can see sometimes those people, they do need to get out of the trough, that hole that they've dug themselves into. And yet you see the positive people, which are on the top of the heap, the top of the mountain, and you think, well, why does everything go to this person? Why does he do well? Why has he got all the good stuff? So maybe there is actually something to it about how we manipulate our own reality to some degree.
Yeah, you got to agree. All right, so circling back to this with the cosmic web, think about what a video game is, right? Video games of world, especially today. You could go into a real world today, interact with other people from all over the globe, and kind of dictate your outcome based upon what the time you put into and if you're optimistic or not, right? Now, look at the cosmic web. Everything's connected, and in my opinion, there's definitely a source because it's undeniable. There's a cosmic web. Everything's connected, and the energies brought in and put out can very well be connected the same way. Now,
absolutely, yeah. Now we know about quantum entanglement, how something just here can affect something millions and millions of light years away.
Right? Yeah, like the atoms have reactions, whether they're here. When I first read that study, I was blown away. So
I was blown away.
Yeah, an atom here and an atom on the other end of the universe can have a simultaneous instant reaction to one another. That's crazy. I mean, when I first heard that, I had to sit down and breathe for a little bit. I was like, wow.
Well, I mean, when I read it, I just thought, from coming from some, technical side of things, it just seemed very similar to some like computer program you'd expect to react and act and react upon from one side of the circuit board to another. We might be unknown to us, but when we start to see comparisons on both sides and see the relationship, we see this connectivity. So I think that's what led us into looking, well, what's connecting it then? And this is when we started figuring out and photographing the universe and started to realize, hang on a second, it's connected like a brain cells. It's like a neural system in the brain.
Yeah. So now think about an advanced life form that's understood this thousands of years before us, right? And if there's life elsewhere, primitive or otherwise, they're able to use this cosmic web to travel to and from, and/or send their advanced robotic machines ahead of them, and they could just show up in the form of a projection. And then
it's very true.
Yeah, and then
it could simply be that. Absolutely.
Yeah. And think about the kids, right? The alien kids are like, "What are you doing today?" I'm like, "I'm watching Planet Earth. These people are crazy."
I mean, it could be. Now we're opening the door now to realize what is reality and what we really is. These connections is that, well, if we found out this now, then an ancient civilization, which is more advanced than us, easily would have found the same thing. Oh, yeah. And where are they now? We'll probably utilize it. I would have thought.
Well, I say this too. I watch these documentaries about the ancient Greeks and some of their inventions, and I was like, wow, it's amazing. Where are they now? Then it turns out that Rome invaded and Catholicism took over, Constantine, and anyone working on these experiments was considered to be a witch or something of that nature. It's against God. We're 2,000 years behind the ball in technology. I say that a lot, but it drives me crazy. We're 2,000 years behind.
That's problematic. I mean, I think some of the evidence supports the fact that maybe we've had obviously a couple of catastrophes in the past, and human civilization has been almost wiped out. But the problem is if something like that's to happen, you wanted to build for instance, a rocket that could travel to another planet. Well, I can't build that. I don't know anybody can build that. Are all the guys that build rockets gone? And that's lost technology. We have to start again. There's a reboot.
Yep.
And I think obviously this we are seeing evidence of these kind of reboots, especially after the the last incident, which obviously caused the rising of the waters and catastrophes to happen around the world.
Right.
We can see evidence in that in the geology. That must have really must have wiped most of humanity away. But the consequences of that is what's been lost. And it's hard to know. Now and again, we start to find things. We think, wow, that stands out. That's something that, it's an ancient computer. This shouldn't exist. And we think, well, okay, if they've done that, they've reached that level. They've reached that level of intelligence to be able to create something like that. If we hadn't had the catastrophe, where would we be now? We could probably say we'll probably be occupying many of the other planets around the sun.
Oh, easily.
Easily.
Graham Hancock, I'm hooked on that, by the way. I discovered him some time ago, and I'm just hooked into it. Now, when I say 2,000 years behind the ball in technology, that's just in our time, right? Modern records, anyway. Now think about civilizations that might have been here that they're completely wiped off the planet due to major catastrophic events, and how many times did that repeat itself? This planet's 4 billion years old. There's plenty of room for error here, so.
Yeah, of course there is. Yeah, we're seeing evidence and we know it's happened, and of course, if it was to happen tomorrow, then we would be facing the same situation because our societies now is built upon communications, electronics and electricity and all those things. And if something should happen and we lose that, then it's back to the cave days.
Yeah.
It is simply that. I mean, because all those things that we need are non-existent anymore.
It's scary. It's scary, man, because when we were talking about earlier about perception, and so you think about like your neighbor 5 houses down, some of the most important or catastrophic things might have happened in his life, but we don't know about it. I mean, our perception is limited to our own space.
It is actually, yeah.
And, today, everyone, I mean, me too, guilty of this. I'm in my phone a lot, more than I should be. And it's not, I mean, I'm not going to say I'm better than the next person because everything I'm in the phone with is something you could, documentary related, space related, but it's still in the phone. I'm not looking around me anymore. My perception's limited to my bubble, and it's unhealthy. We're going to miss things. You can miss things like that. We spent countless years as a species looking to the sky for answers. And then we get smarter, make cooler things to get information from, and we're not looking at the sky anymore. We're not imagining.
No. Computers and phones we're looking at now.
yeah. Our imagination's slipping away. That's why a lot of the things I speak from imagination.
Touch, yeah. I mean, certainly humanity seemingly lost touch with the Earth itself, and because I've had this talk many times, and I've said to people, we can all go back, and dig up bones of ancient, of the ancient ancestors, and say, oh yeah, this person was 5'4", and he probably died in his 40s, and this is how he probably lived, and da da da. One thing we can't ever find is the consciousness and spirituality and the capabilities of those individuals back then. They were certainly, from what we know, in tune with planet Earth, capable of picking up frequencies or feeling them or identifying them, and it's evidence in the buildings and the construction and the things that survived from those days. They were very much different than us, but not in a sense where we have to give more credence to our ancient ancestors and their capabilities.
Agreed.
We're finding things every single day, and which shocks us. And even their building construction is better than what we've got even now. It's just a different way of thinking and a different way of process. And the problem for us now is that, we are a different type of being to them. And we're disconnected. I think they were more connected with planet Earth and its natural energies and all sorts of different things, because we can see that around the world there was some type of ancient grid that lined up these ancient sites. And they must have known about this.
I think so.
How they could have known that without instruments in them days is amazing.
I mean, I look at that tablet from, I think it's was it the Ancient Sumerians, the tablet where it's all the planets. How the hell did they see that? How is that? How did they know that? Like, I was watching.
So many mysteries. You know,
Yeah. I'm watching a documentary from 2021 learning about how we found Neptune, and it was like a mystery in the 1800s, 1900s, and even in the 1990s, we didn't know much about it. How the hell did they even know it was there? You know?
Yeah, of course, there's always the ancient hypothesis of astronauts from visiting from another place and giving that knowledge to us. Okay, fair enough, feasible. I mean, I suppose it's not impossible, you know. But then, you know, we've most of humanity's been wiped out since then, though. So.
Yeah, I mean, but there's no way they guessed where those planets were. You know, it's pretty exact.
I mean, you know, it's impossible to see some of these things with a naked eye. So the questions are as to how they obtain that information.
Yeah, listen. If there's any proof or shred of evidence that something is beyond us, whether it be parallel to the normal here or at visited, well, that's a good example. I mean, they display the sun and all the other planets in their exact positions, and even have charting to understand. I mean, and you cannot see Neptune with the naked eye. It's not possible. I mean, even thousands of years ago, when there was no city lights or no lights, ambient lights, you couldn't see that. It was a mystery to modern times until our telescopes got better. I mean, I don't know. That food for thought on that for me for the future. I'll look more into it.
So, you know, we live on a planet with just, you know, so many mysteries, and you know, I think, you know, I used to think when I was young, you know, maybe we can make an impact. Maybe we can in our lifetime. But you know what? I don't think we can. I think that there's so much that we need to learn that I don't think it's achievable in a lifetime. I think, you know, I mean, I think it's going to take a considerable length of time. I hope we have the time to figure it out. I think, you know, that's for me is probably the most important thing.
I think the only way we do that, and I'm going to be frank, is if we start looking at each other as a species and erase racism, I'm not saying religion's bad. They have a positive message, but it's just one more reason for divide.
It is.
We need to be able to see each other as a species and come together with, there's probably so many scientists in all these different countries and they don't communicate together because of these weird separations. Who knows where we'd be right now if we just gathered our thoughts and spoke as a species for the benefit of our species. I think we'd already been interplanetary by now. I think so.
Yeah, it's very feasible. That's we're always having that. We are products of our own problems.
Really. Yeah, it's crazy.
But don't get me wrong. There are times when I think, oh God, I don't even want to be human. You know, there's some of the things I hear about. I want to be disconnected from it.
I'm the same way. My heart breaks when I see these videos of people beating each other up and they're celebrating it. I'm like, what the hell are you doing? Like, how we have not evolved at all. Our technology has leapfrogged us as far as evolution. We're still stuck in the 80s.
How did we manage to get so much technology in such a short time is beyond me. I mean, though that we may have actually obtained certain things that's put us on a higher speed track. You know, I mean, I think a lot of things kind of around about the 1980s and into the 1990s, things just went off the scope and went black. You know, I mean, we look at a space program, for an example. You know, we're still looking at the same type of space program that we've always looked at. You know, and I think, you know, looking at the way technology is just growing, you can draw it on the map, and it's going up and up and up and up, and then it flatlines. As if all of a sudden things went black.
Yeah.
You know, and we don't want to tell the general public the true technologies that we currently have, as opposed to what was visible to us.
Well, yeah, I mean, you know, cell phones and GPS, that was a thing long before we had it publicly, right? It was because it was military applications.
Yes, it was, yeah.
And then when military applications and you know, things slow down, they're like, well, we can make money on this. And then, and then industry follows in corporate, and they're like, well, we can make a lot of money on this. And then if you look, I mean, my first cell phone, you wouldn't want to know what I paid per month for that. It was crazy. And now it's just base. Like they're like, well, we have $20 and unlimited this, and because it's commonly placed now. So the best technology on Earth to date is something that's been retro-engineered. You know what I mean? Like, and so when I see some of the things that, and with the leapfrog, when you look in like the early 90s versus 1999, what an extreme that was. And then 2000 to 2011, unrecognizable extremes. You know, so it's definitely getting faster. It's definitely getting faster.
It is worrying because I don't think the problem is that I don't think consciously humans, our human brothers and sisters, are advancing enough to keep up with the technology growth. I think what's happening is one's going to supersede the other. And what do you end up with at the end of that is some kids with real dangerous matches in their hands. And are we capable? Can we use it responsibly? That's the biggest thing.
That's a scary part.
It is, yeah. I mean, some of the recent studies of, I mean, been reading a number of things about, Martian discoveries and isotopes and stuff like that. And it seems from the information I'm reading that there seems to be some evidence to support that there had been some nuclear activity on planet Mars. They're trying to figure out, what was it that could have caused that? Because the isotopes are so high in certain areas, it suggests that something significantly tragic took place on the surface of planet Mars, maybe wiping to the point where it just lost its atmosphere and became a redundant planet, which looks to have, I have to say, in some of these photographs I've seen, looks to have, things there which look machine parts and bits and bobs which just don't look right for that on that surface. And well, probably thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of years old. And you cast your eyes back to the beginning of the Bible, and it said, it all started with the war in heaven. I remember, once a friend of mine telling me that I think he was talking with a priest or something, and this came up in conversation, and I believe he whispered in his ear, he said, "Well, most people think we won." And I thought, I really got that, just blew me mind. So, oh my God, what's he saying here?
To that point, the atmosphere, if we damage the ozone, we almost lost our ozone layer because of aerosol, right? And so if we lost our ozone layer, there is no atmosphere. It escapes. The void of space consumes it, I'm pretty sure. Yeah. So if you think about, if we dropped every nuke on this planet, like we went to all-out war, we could absolutely destroy the ozone layer, and then the atmosphere would follow. So, yeah, maybe you're right. Maybe thousands.
Like planet Mars. We'd end up looking like planet Mars. The waters would disappear, and we'd become very dry. We'd be open to the elements of basically the universe with no protection whatsoever.
Yeah, radiation blast and. Yeah, everything. It would wipe out everything. Even like steel could not survive that corrosion, right? It would eventually dissipate.
Yeah, it's an interesting point that, because so I was talking to a number of ancient astronaut guys. Those are up at the top level and doing all the research and stuff. And I said to them, look, you know what? I mean, when you look at some of these stones, you can clearly see that the machine marks. You can clearly see that a rotation of a very large saw or something have been used. You can measure it. You can see, look at these holes that have been burrowed through rock. If you look at them closely, you can see the revolution of something moving through them. And what is it? And they said to me, machine marks. I said, well, where's the bloody machines? He said, I'll tell you where the machines are. If you go to these locations, just outside these locations are pits which are full of iron dust, and steel and all sorts. It's dust.
Well, it's funny.
It won't survive it. You said you stick a car engine out there just for 5,000. Just take 5,000 years. There'll be nothing but dust out there.
Yeah, no, fact. So I'm glad you say this, because when I was a kid, I thought, and I don't know what drove me to it, but I remember thinking that Mars was somewhere that they would drill for resources. And when I say they, I meant aliens. I think, and it made me think, because this is me, this is my 11, 12-year-old mind thinking as a kid. I remember thinking they went to Mars because it was pretty barren, they could drill for resources, and that's how they discovered us. That's a kid thinking, like, wow, they found Earth because they're trying to drill resources, and there's this blue place that they had to check out, and then they find us, and we're interesting to watch. That was me as a kid, And then you say what you say now. Elon Musk would go into Mars. Obviously, going there, we're going to have to figure out what we could utilize there for resources, because we're not going to make trips back and forth. It's infeasible.
Yeah.
And so it'll be more practical if something there is we could mine. And we're not the first to think of that. There's no way we're the first to think of that.
So at all? No, I don't think we're the first to think of that. In fact, they were talking about mining the moon back in the late 70s, from what I can remember, because they said that the moon, the information that they had from surveys carried out, suggested that they were all on the moon which is extremely expensive, which would be to mine the moon.
Right.
And of course, that went very quiet.
Yeah, listen, if they found gold on the moon, the moon would mostly be gone by now. There'd be half a moon left.
Who knows what's going on, But the problem is we have this attitude, I think, that what we see is ours.
Yeah. Well, that's why that's the hard part about humanity, where we have a conquering state of mind. And
it's true, yeah. I mean, I remember about 20 years ago, as I bought one of those moon plots, just as a bit of a joke,
Yeah.
It sends you a nice little photograph and show you where your little plot is, on the moon. You own this bit, And I used to have a little bit of a giggle with it.
I don't know. In the upcoming future, it might be feasible for you to claim that plot, because think about it. The moon's a proving. It's going to have to be a proving ground. Yeah. We're going to have to go to Mars. We're going to need somewhere to stop in the middle. We can't launch from Earth all the time. It's going to be expensive. It takes less propulsion to leave the moon. So that plot of yours might be a condo in the future. So if you want to sell,
I'll make sure to keep that just in case I need to charge rent.
I'm telling you, hold on to it. You never know. Prime real estate.
Absolutely. But you know what? I think about, the whole idea of, well, we're going to go there, that we own this. If they're saying that there's very easily that extraterrestrial intelligence could be out there, considering the amount of planets that are out there, and many and more are inhabitable than we thought, to be honest with you.
Right.
And we're finding these all the time now. I remember the first day, it was really great to find a planet that might be a bit like us. Apparently, they're everywhere. They're all over the place. There's hundreds of these things. Yeah,
and with this new telescope, I'm telling you, man, we're going to find, I think this new telescope is going to open a doorway for some crazy discovery. I think so. Yeah. And I'm optimistic that we're going to find, and if I'm not mistaken, it's going to be able to measure the gases correctly. Let us find the hint of oxygen elsewhere, and our entire program is going to shift. That's a promise.
All we got to do now is work out traversity. How are we going to get there? And that's because we know where we want to go. And do we have the technology to get there? Well, I don't know. Regarding the technology we currently see is not. But then who knows what technology we've got, which we don't see. Because like I said, there's a lot of black programs that obviously are out there. We know that the amount of trillions of dollars that disappears and gets swallowed up into these black programs, we haven't got a clue what's going on and what's being spent on. But at the end of the day, I wouldn't be surprised. There seems to be more of an effort now in regarding space, especially from the Chinese. They're really getting into it now.
Yep.
And I hear that Saudi Arabia want to get involved. They want to have their own space program. They want a piece of the pie.
Yeah, as they should. You got to think to the future.
Well, exactly. The biggest problem regarding space activities was the money that is required to do so. Yeah. And I tell you now, if they get their act together, they've got the money to do it.
Well, here's another thing too, Steve. Real soon, and here's what I think the government is starting to speak more about ufology openly. I'll tell you why. Private industry is going to space more and more. Eventually, they're going to see something in the private industry, and you think they're going to keep their mouth shut? That's a sensation on YouTube. They're like, hell no, we're going to record this. Think of the likes,
It is, yeah. I do know that they spend more money keeping the secrets than they do on the programs themselves.
Right.
Just to keep it secret. They spend more money trying to keep it secret than the actual program itself. And that, you've got to consider whose eyes are going to be on this, and do they have a need to know? How many people could feasibly come forward and tell us about things, of an extraterrestrial nature or whatever that they've witnessed, seen, or, what the government's involved in? Probably many. But they got it quite tight up there, with threats of imprisonment and all sorts of different things. So, people aren't really going to be coming forward.
A lot of that's control. And the reason is, because, Steven, imagine this. You go to a predominantly Christian nation like America, and you say, God's not real and the Bible's nonsense. What's going to happen is a lot of people are going to be like, well, why didn't I just divorce her? Why didn't I kill this dude? What prevents me from just going to the bank and taking whatever money I want? You know what I mean? You lose that control. And one of the biggest things ufology, when it comes to when it's out there, when it's all disclosed, is you're putting religion under question, heavy question, which is why I think the Catholics are even now looking at space and saying the idea that God made everything, which when you look at the cosmic web, I think God made everything. If indeed God exists, you look at a cosmic web, unquestionably, it's all connected. And like you said earlier, it looks like a construct.
It does.
You know, I mean, it looks like if you look at a chip, open your phone or computer, look at a computer chip. That's what the cosmic web reminds me of.
Yeah.
I mean, it
looks like it's something that's been manufactured. You know, whatever it be, I mean, it is God. I mean, don't even know what God is, but something has constructed something.
Yeah.
The world we live in, and not just the world we live in, it goes seemingly beyond that to the universe or the galaxy around us. There's something which has been responsible.
Or the paranormal. Listen, all right, before we close, we'll discuss afterlife, because I have some thoughts. And I've learned a lot in the last, well, I mean, not enough to be an expert by any means, but when you think about the cosmic web again, and now we're referencing in the afterlife, everything's connected. There is a source, something created it. When you pass, maybe that's the realms you go to. Maybe the ufology and the paranormal have a bigger connection than what we actually can perceive. Like, I think...
if we become energy, which, like you say, is energy.
Yeah.
You know, if the soul is energy, then, you know, maybe that's what we're looking at.
And then you look at a cosmic web and it's one big circuit board, right? It's all like fiber optic cables, and we are all energy at our core. Every single thing that we know is energy, and it's all connected, you know?
Yeah.
And Earth could be a proving ground for us, by the way. I have this thought, like, people are like, what about heaven and hell? I think here on Earth, we're here on a proving ground. Based on your actions here, you either get recycled and come back for another try because you didn't do so great, or you did amazing and you get recycled because we need more of you in our world to continue. That's not my theory of reincarnation.
Well, you know, everything in life is a cycle, isn't it? Everything
It is.
So why shouldn't life or humanity be not the same? I mean, it's everything else is. Everything we see in this universe is a cycle. You know, it don't seem right that we're not. You know, obviously we're part of the program. I would expect that to be the case. And our consciousness, you know, that sometimes, you know, when we hear about reincarnation, we hear about people who have the memory of a previous events, which they shouldn't do, is as if that they're going through that cycle, but they remember parts of it. The problem is for the parapsychological departments, they don't want to get into afterlife because you have to fear death. And this is what they, you know, death is controlled. Just like you said earlier, if people don't fear death, if we just took it verbatim that, well, do you know what? I don't care what happens to me today, you know, because I'll be around tomorrow or the day after in another body or whatever. And if that was the theory of how we would believe life would be, we'd have some chaos. We really would, because there is control with death. People are scared to do things, are scared to push forward and maybe, you know, do it for right or wrong. But it is control, and that control is a very important thing, and which is utilized. But for the parapsychological department, they want to turn around and say, well, do you know what? There's no evidence of it. There's no evidence of the afterlife. There's plenty of evidence. They don't really want to get into it too heavily, to be honest with you. And we'll find loopholes to try and get out of it. But, you know, these guys are intelligent. They can work it out. They know what stuff is going on. You know, people's reports, experiences and things like that. I'm sure they sit there at night and can figure this out and say, okay, yeah, there's something. But they don't want to come forward and say it is, because like you said earlier, you know, control is a very important thing.
It is. And it's sad. I mean, listen, look at a picture of the cosmic web and then look at a picture of a scan of a human brain. Look at the similarities. And now think about this. So I guess the best way to do it is this. Here's life. You are born to this world. And if you watch The Matrix, right now, and I want to try to dumb this down a bit, but watch The Matrix. So when you pass along and people are like, well, there's electricity in the brain until it stops. Sure. Because now it's now re-uploaded to the server, right?
Well, yeah, actually, yeah.
Yeah. And the cosmic web, where now let's say you go to the next level from wherever this is, you're connected to this big web. That next level could be another world that's either forward or backward in technology and or, you know, some other plane. But, you know, like when you're a bad person, again, here on Earth, it's a proving ground. When your brain gets re-uploaded to the server, you're getting recycled because you have to prove yourself. You can't go to the next level till you prove yourself.
That's right.
Or you're a really good person, you did really good here on Earth, and you're recycled here, which is why I think when you were saying earlier, like some people have memories of their past life, your consciousness is pure energy. So your brain has all these circuits that store that energy. It could be imprinted, and then when you do reincarnate or get recycled, what's the likelihood? I mean, what's to say it didn't imprint a little bit, and the information is trying to work its way back through.
Well, yeah, we obviously got all that information because, you know, when we have seances and things like that where there's communication taking place, there's memories that you are conversing or recording communications with something that has memory.
Yeah, there's an imprint. It's like, listen, when you use a fiber optic cable to send information from your computer to your server and otherwise, that's not physical. You're sending, you're sending energy in the form, and all it's doing is it's receiving the information from one end and bringing the other one, and the computer is translating the information being received. Yeah. Same for your energy.
Translating it in light form,
right,
at the speed of light.
yeah. So if you think about that, we're basically the cosmic web, our brain, our fiber optic cables in our head. The energy information can be imprinted, and then when it's re-put into a new computer, we'll say the body's a computer, right? Yeah. It's rebooted a new computer. Some of that information is still there. It's still imprinted, and I think a lot of that's what's going on, in my own theory anyway.
Yeah, it's true. I mean, I think, you know, in years to come, we're going to think back, do you know what? In the years 2000s and stuff, it was so much simpler then.
Yeah.
You know, a ghost was just a ghost. A UFO was just something from another planet. You know, I mean, and of course, as time's going on, it's like, oh my God, what we opened here, what door we opened.
Yeah. Honestly, think about what Elon's doing, Neuralink, right? Yeah. You're going to be able to communicate, not even use words. You can look at someone, they just know. They instantly know. You don't even have to, it's not even a text message in their head. You just know what they're thinking. You could, best way you can say is you, like in your imagination, when you think of pizza, you see the image of pizza. So you translate, you know what it is.
Yeah,
so
true.
Yeah, I mean, who knows? The sky's the limit after that happens.
You know, it's interesting you say that because when we had some early tests done in 1998 regarding spiritual communications, we had obtained very good long-standing communications through instrumental transcommunication, and we did a little test during one of these sittings, which I wasn't at purposely. I was over 100 miles away. The individual was sat. One of the individuals sat during this session was on the mobile phone, and I talked with them. Oh no, not the mobile; it would have been a normal phone. And I talked with them, and I said, "Can you ask a question to these individuals about? I'm at home, and I'm holding something in my hand, and can you ask them what I'm holding, just to see? You know, I'm over 100 miles away." And immediately comes back and says, they've said pendulum. And it was like instant. And I was sat on the end of my bed, and I had a pocket watch, and I was swinging it backwards and forwards. And I suppose, well, yeah, it's a pendulum of some sort, you know. But it was instant. That's what I was getting at, Adam. It was like, there was no thought. It was just bang, there it is. And I thought, wow. I mean, you know, did he see it? Did he know it? Is it this Akashic record? He just tap into this consciousness, obtain that information like just as fast as light, you know, because that's how it seemed to. It was just, they knew the information straight away without any time to think and thought or anything. And yeah, I'm over 100 miles away. I sat at my house. So, you know, that they clearly got that information somehow.
Yeah,
you know, that's fascinating.
That's why I really believe that psychics aren't supernatural. I think they're just better tapped into the system. You know what I mean? Like, again, the cosmic web, everything connected, energy in the air, energy all around us. I think they're just tapped in better. I think the stigma people put on psychics is like, oh, they could read the future. It's not so much so as that they're just really connected and they have a good intuition. Like, there's some detectives I talk to. They have really good gut. They call it the gut instinct. I know I got the gut instinct, but they're tapping into something, you know, parallel to the normal.
Yeah, there's definitely something about this intuition or heightened intuition, because some people do seemingly do tap into it. Somehow they have a way of tapping the source. Though through communications in experiments being conducted, we have obtained information of events to take place 18 months in the future. Whatever these things we were communicating with, definitely knew on 2 occasions, you're absolutely right, on 2 occasions that took place 18 months later. I don't know if they can see further than that. Maybe they do.
Well, think about this, Steve. If the energy that impacted that 18 months from now, the energy impacted so greatly that, again, everything's connected, right? Again, think of that cosmic web and all the energy around. It's connected. So it was such a large impact that the people finally tuned into it here, picked up on it.
Yeah.
So I mean, it's hard. That's why I never say never to anything. Ever.
No,
you never know.
Can't. I mean, with the stuff we're learning now and about the connectivity, it throws all these things into a whole new basket, doesn't it? Really,
it does. I mean,
now we can see how connectivity can happen.
Yeah, and I got to tell you, like I interviewing people on podcast, off podcast, in form of email, I find parallels in a lot of things.
Oh, yeah, I do.
And I got to tell you, when you see that many parallels, I know these people aren't communicating. You know what I mean? Yeah. When you see that means there's some sort of greater connection that we're all missing. And because I'm a UFO specialist and I'm a paranormal specialist, or even the guy's a homicide detective or whatever, something's there. Yeah. Something is there. It's greater than what we are. We don't acknowledge it, but it exists.
There's definitely something there. We've all had those. I mean, I think with everybody who I've talked to, always had at least an experience where they just look at it and think, but that's beyond normal. It's beyond normality. I've had an experience here which is so coincidence. It's just extreme, where something had to have been involved. There's some connectivity had to have happened. It can't have been random. It couldn't have been a normal act. But just to add insult to injury, sometimes those things continue over and over again, especially to people like us in these type of fields we work in. The incredible connectivity is that sometimes it's as if you've been, led down a certain path of connection. And you think, well, hang on a second, that person knows this person. I was only talking to him yesterday. And you live on the opposite side of the world? And I'm thinking to myself, it just couldn't happen. But it does, and it happens over and over again. And the people I talk to in these subjects, with paranormal, UFO and stuff, they say the same things. They said, you know what? I know what you're talking about. I know about these connections. I've experienced them, but I don't know how that can happen. And yet there's so many people are having it.
Well, it's an understanding. When you have that, again, I say this so many times, I hate playing broken records, but I firmly believe if you put things in the universe via thought or speech, I think it reverbs because it's information one way or the other. And you can't look at it as like a prayer or a hope. You have to look at, you're putting information out there in the form of energy, and you don't know what's receiving it. And you don't know how it's going to be, how it's going to be countered. You don't know. Like, remember the lucky guy versus the unlucky guy?
Exactly. Yeah.
These all have connections, and these parallels need to be explored more widely from science. Yeah. From the level of the investigator at the ground to the level of the scientist in the lab, more communication needs to be established.
It does. And I think we also need to find out a lot more about human potential and how we interact with reality. I mean, we go back, a couple of 100 years ago about witchcraft and occult and how they believed they could birth something into reality. A tulpa. In fact, given its own intelligence, as if it's an individual source of information, which is a living thing. And they think that they believe they could create these. And on many occasions, there's report. I mean, look at the Philip experiment that took place in Canada and Ontario, where a number of psychologists got together and created a ghost, which they experienced generally just manufactured it through thought. And then you have to question. Okay, well, if you have enough people, you take them into a house, and you fill them with prior knowledge and expectation, can they make a haunted house? Can that house become haunted because you think it's haunted?
Well, yeah. You could absolutely summon issues, right?
Yeah.
It's if you ever watch Michael Jordan play basketball in the 90s, and you listen to his interviews, and what was this? It's on Netflix, the Last Dance on Netflix.
Oh, yeah.
That guy goes to levels mentally that other people didn't go to. he channeled something. That's the Jedi Factor. The guy got out there and performed, and even when he was sick. So that's a sports figure who learned how to channel his brain at its highest capacity. And that could be said for anyone in any field at any time. You could channel something. And so when people like you want to summon spirits and blah, 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 I don't doubt it, because you're using energy in this very connected universe to summon something. It's what level you go to, or you choose to go or not go. But that's the difference.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, there are some really interesting experiments about things. I mean, there's another test that's going to be carried out, a continuation of the Philip experiment, maybe next year, by a researcher known as Anthony Peake. And he specializes in researching the process of the brain and death and all sorts of different things. But he's really got into this idea that, we can create something, make it something part of our reality by simple thought. That process is nothing new. It actually goes back to ancient times, referencing that. We just didn't take it literally until proven experiments to show, oh, hang on a second. If you will something, if you want it to become and you believe it is, it can become. It can be something which is independent from our source. It can become a self-reliant source. Just as a haunting can become, just a house can be haunted if you believe it to be so enough. You basically are creating something.
Yeah, I mean,
to myself, well, that applies pretty much to a lot of things in life.
It's technology catching up with belief, and I don't think we're far off from a lot of answers here in the near future. Anyway, I mean, if we apply ourselves, the sky's the limit. It really is, and that's why I keep saying we gotta do it as a species, or we're gonna miss a lot of stuff. I mean, there's a lot of great minds out there that should be at the table talking about this. I mean, hopefully.
Yeah, I think, well, if they are, they're not in, they're in the higher circles and so on. They're trying to keep a lot of them to themselves, because maybe they don't want to let people know that we can tap the source, we can make a change. And what happens when people start to make significant change? It doesn't tend to end well for them, does it, Adam?
No. Anyway, Steve, we're at that mark. I'm going to have you on again because I have another subject I want to cover with you.
Oh, absolutely, Adam. Yeah, I love it. Brilliant.
I had a great time, man. We had a great conversation. I look forward to doing it again.
Absolutely. I look forward to being back, Adam, and thanks for having me on.
Indeed, sir. We'll talk soon.
Okay, you take care. Thanks again.
Thanks again.